Democrats Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris picked up 4 Pinocchios from the Washington Post for their description of the Michael Brown incident in Ferguson, Missouri. President Donald Trump takes a much-needed step to clean up the legal immigration process, and the public school system is even more left-wing than you think. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
God bless the United States of America.
All right, friends, happy Wednesday. Welcome to the show. Before we jump in, I've got to tell you about my friends over at Bottle Breacher. Please check them out. They make some great stuff, from groomsmen's gifts to promotional item, basically stuff for dudes. It's awesome. Just go to bottlebreacher.com. Use coupon code Bobby13-A1 for 20% off your next purchase. That's bottlebreacher.com, coupon code Bobby13-A1. All right, so first I want to talk about Democrats Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris. They're both running for president, and they will both say anything to rile up division, stir up division, foster it, pit people against each other, namely the American people versus Donald Trump, but it's always us versus them, and they will stop at nothing, use racism, bigotry, whatever, all the stuff they blast the right about, that's what they do, and they were at it again to such an extent a few days ago that even left-wing sources, media sources, blasted them for their wording. As you know, recently it was the 5-year anniversary of Michael Brown being shot in Ferguson, the incident that started the whole Black Lives Matter movement. And both of those two, Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris, decided to put out tweets. And here, we'll start with Kamala Harris. Here's what she wrote. Michael Brown's murder forever changed Ferguson and America. His tragic death sparked a desperately needed conversation and a nationwide movement. We must fight for stronger accountability and racial equity in our justice system. So that's just unreal when you see how much she wrote that was absolutely false, all right? And especially one particular part. But then here's Elizabeth Warren. 5 years ago, Michael Brown was murdered by a white police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. Michael was unarmed, yet he was shot 6 times. I stand with activists and organizers who continue the fight for justice for Michael. We must confront systemic racism and police violence head on. All right. So again, there's a lot of problems with those tweets, but the main one is both Harris and Warren said that Michael Brown was murdered. I mean, what is that? Of course, Warren goes out and, she specifically says it was a white police officer, but murdered? I mean, Michael Brown attacked a police officer, reached into his car, tried to grab his gun, tried to punch him. The local investigation found that it was self-defense. Well, then the Obama administration stepped in and had their DOJ, Obama's DOJ, step in, and they said that it was self-defense. No charges against the police officer, both at the local and the federal level. And here's more. And so because of that, because of these statements, and the left-wing media, Vox and others, they couldn't even help themselves. They had to blast Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris. They worded it, and some of them worded it in such a way that it's like, yeah, man, we hate to do it, but you guys were a little wrong. But here's the report from the Washington Post from their fact checker. Harris and Warren have ignored the findings of the Justice Department to accuse Wilson of murder, even though the Justice Department found no credible evidence to support that claim. Instead, the Justice Department found that the popular narrative was wrong, according to witnesses deemed to be credible, some of whom testified reluctantly because of fear of reprisal. The department produced a comprehensive report to determine what happened, making the senator's dismissal of it even more galling. Harris and Warren both earned 4 Pinocchios. And again, that wasn't the only source that blasted Warren and Harris. And it just shows that, they knew what they were typing. And I'm sure they, were briefed, and whatever staffer wrote it up, they both coordinated, they both used the word murder, and it is so wrong. And all that does is stoke racial tensions. And they talk about President Trump. Look at what they are doing. And thankfully, even the left just thought that was too much, because it is, and that is not what we need to do as people running for president, to try and stoke divisions. What about bringing people together? but they'll attack President Trump any day of the week. And speaking of President Trump, he made a great move this weekend or this week in addressing the immigration system. And, you know, when he ran, one of the reasons that he won was because he made this a central issue, both legal and illegal immigration. And we've seen what he has done with illegal immigration. I mean, he's requested more funding for the detention centers that are getting overrun. He's asked for wall construction, and they've been building and replacing and repairing walls and barriers. He is doing that. He has worked with Mexico to get Mexico to supply its own troops to help stem the flow of illegal immigration. So now the president has taken a step on the legal side. And this is much needed because we have statistics. I've actually gone over them in a previous show on how much immigrants over time and relative to the population of natural-born American citizens use public assistance, use the welfare system, use taxpayer-funded programs. So something needs to be done, okay? Something needs to be done about all these immigrants who come over, and the statistics show that disproportionately they use the welfare system. They rely on it, some live on it. It becomes a way of life, and that needs to change. That is not sustainable. That's not why we're here as a country, to welcome people that are not going to be self-sufficient and just live off the taxpayer dime. So the acting director, Ken Cuccinelli, briefed reporters, and he laid out this case. And again, this is not about kicking people off of welfare. This is about screening future immigrants, people applying to come in or for permanent status. Are they going to be a drain on society, or are they going to be self-sufficient? And here's what Cuccinelli had to say.
Since 1996, the law has required foreign nationals to rely on their own capabilities and the resources of their families, sponsors, and private organizations in their communities to succeed. However, Congress has never defined the term public charge in the law, and that term hadn't been clearly defined by regulation.
So this means finally, it's a little bit of common sense. There's finally a definition of what it means to be a public charge so that you can apply that criteria to see if immigrants should remain in this country. And here's the definition.
Under the rule, a public charge is now defined as an individual who receives one or more designated public benefits for more than 12 months in the aggregate within any 36-month period.
So now it's pretty simple. You have a pretty simple definition. If you use a year's worth of public assistance over a 3-year time, that can be used against you in determining if you are going to become a citizen or permanent resident or any of those long-term residency type categories, all right? And again, this is nothing new. Applying this kind of criteria has been around for over 100 years. They're simply putting a definition so that you can actually apply it, because we want self-sufficient people. We want people who are going to contribute. The idea of coming over and participating in the American dream is why people come here. We want them to come here if they're going to contribute. We want the next generation of doctors and lawyers and plumbers and bricklayers. What we don't want, and what we can't afford as taxpayers, is the next generation of welfare recipients. So, heads up, thumbs up to President Trump for addressing this so that we can clean up the legal immigration process as well. And of course, because of this definition, the left is just freaking out. And here's a report from MSNBC.
We know the president has always had a preference for immigrants from Nordic countries. He's made that very clear, as opposed to some of the other disadvantaged countries. Walk us through the impact on these immigrants. Why now?
Wow, so that's unbelievable. And even NBC's White House correspondent didn't know how to react to that and just thought that was just far out. Here's her response.
Well, I don't know that the president has expressed a preference for Nordic countries. That is something where I'm not sure where you're getting that from. But he has certainly said that he has an emphasis on merit-based immigration. So
again, it's a typical response from the left. And this policy is something that I wanted to inform you guys on because it makes sense. It's been a policy for the United States for over 100 years. We want people to be self-sufficient. And all of this does is actually encourages immigrants to have their act together before they come over. So it is a positive move. It's positive for the taxpayers, and in the long run, it helps the country. And that's all we can ask. And so kudos to President Trump for putting this forward. Now I want to talk about our messed up public education system, because I've got two examples and they are just nuts. First, the governor of Illinois just signed a bill into law that as part of middle school education, they're going to have the LGBTQ history as part of the curriculum. And here's a report from CNS News. It says, the law amends the school code in Illinois. Specifically, it mandates that textbooks authorized to be purchased must include the roles and contribution of all people protected under the Illinois Human Rights Act and must be non-discriminatory as to any of the characteristics under the act. It further provides that textbooks purchased with grant funds must be non-discriminatory, and that in public schools only, the teaching of history of the United States shall include a study of the roles and contributions of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people in the history of this country and this state. I mean, so what is that? How do you implement that? When you're talking about history, when you're talking about a battle, like in Texas, the Battle of the Alamo, or U.S. history, are you going to then stop and pause and say, oh, by the way, this guy was gay? Or, by the way, this person that was a hero in this battle happened to be a transgender dude. What difference does it make? We're studying historical events, and they want to bring in at this middle school level the sexual orientation of the people who are doing it. It makes absolutely no sense. And to show you how just far off these guys are, that's not the only thing that they added to the education curriculum. Check this out. In addition to the LGBT history, the schools must also include a study of the role of labor unions and their interaction with government in achieving the goals of a mixed free enterprise system. No pupil shall be graduated from the 8th grade of any public school unless he or she has received such instruction in the history of the United States and gives evidence of having a comprehensive knowledge thereof. So there you have it. In Illinois, you've got to learn the sexual orientation of historic figures, and you have to study labor unions and their contributions. This is part of their history program now. Now, moving up to college education, my daughter just graduated, and she had one more class to take, an elective, and so she just decided to just jump right in. She took a class on race and ethnic relations, okay? And here is the textbook. It's called Recognizing Race and Ethnicity, Power, Privilege, and Inequality. And it is absolutely nuts. This is an actual class, and it's being taught, and you would think that with classes, with textbooks, it's supposed to be objective, but this doesn't make any pretense of that. It doesn't try and hide anything, and it's just outrageous. Check out this excerpt. It says, more current examples of the continuing significance of race include the race-baiting Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has been accused of. Specifically, his claims that Mexicans are rapists and that we should build a wall to keep them out, and his promise that if he becomes president of the United States, he will deport all Muslims. Are you kidding me? So this author, she doesn't even, go with the line that says, Trump wants to ban all Muslims. No, she takes this a step further and says, if he was elected president, he's going to deport them all. He's going to kick them all out. So it's just absolute outrageous that they just make stuff up. And this is a textbook, a scholarly work, supposedly. Then I want one more example. And this is from the book. It says, the implementation of strict voter ID laws, which are found in 33 states and require people to show a government-issued photo ID in order to vote, is also a good example of the continuing significance of race. First, there is no evidence of massive voter fraud that needs to be addressed. Second, such ID requirements would not stop voter fraud. Finally, liberals see this as a Republican tactic to depress voter turnout among key constituencies, primarily African Americans and other racial minorities, students, and the poor, all of whom tend to vote Democrat. And this is sourced from Graham 2016. So this is absolutely amazing. And so what I did was I looked at that source, Graham 2016, and it is actually an article, half like news op-ed from The Atlantic. I mean, that is a far left-wing publication, and that's the source for a textbook. So then I looked, and I want to just reiterate what this textbook, my daughter's textbook, said regarding some of the voter ID. The author wrote, first, there is no evidence of massive voter fraud that needs to be addressed. All right, so that sounds like a strong statement of fact. So then I went and looked at the Atlantic article, did a search on evidence. There's just one instance of that word. And here was the sentence. It says, liberals who oppose voter ID laws counter that there's next to no evidence of actual voting fraud. So it goes from a statement of fact to the actual sentence is the liberals' opinion that there's no actual fraud. And it's just this twisting that goes over and over again that these students will accept as fact when it's clear that this whole textbook is an opinion piece, a left-wing propaganda piece, and it's absolutely outrageous. Folks, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell, and we'll see you next time. I'm Bobby Eberly. This is a 13-Minute News Hour. Okay, friends, just a little reminder before you go, and no, this does not count against my 13 minutes. Please hit the subscribe button below and tell your friends. And if you happen to miss our last show, you can check it out right here. And also for great conservative news and commentary, please check out GOPUSA.com. All right, folks, we'll see you on the next show. Have a great day.